the river that runs through everything. Ladies and gentlemen, close your eyes for just a moment. Imagine standing at the edge of a river in the early morning. The air is cool. The light is soft. Mist rises slowly from the surface. The water moves not violently, not hesitantly, but with purpose. It flows around rocks. It bends around obstacles. It adapts. It continues. It never argues with the mountain. It never fights the earth. It simply flows. Now open your eyes. That river is not just water. That river is life. And tonight, I want to talk to you about flow. Not just flow in rivers, but flow in ecosystems. And even more importantly, flow in us. Because ecosystems are not just collections of organisms. They are living symphonies of movement. They are networks of exchange. They are conversations without words. Flow is the language they speak. Every ecosystem on Earth, from the forests of Oregon to the wetlands of Louisiana, from the deserts of Arizona to the coral reefs of Florida, is defined not by what it contains, but by what moves through it. Energy flows, water flows, nutrients flow, information flows, life flows, and where flow exists, life thrives. Where flow is blocked, life struggles, and where flow stops, life disappears. This is not philosophy. This is biology. The sun sends energy across 93 million miles of empty space. That energy touches a leaf. The leaf transforms light into sugar. The sugar feeds an insect. The insect feeds a bird. The bird feeds the soil. The soil feeds the tree. Nothing is wasted. Everything moves. Everything flows. An ecosystem is not a place. It is a process. It is not a thing. It is a happening. Right now, inside your own body, trillions of cells are participating in flows you cannot see. Blood flows, oxygen flows, electrical signals flow through your nervous system at speeds faster than race cars. If that flow stops for even a few minutes, the consequences are irreversible. Flow is not optional. Flow is survival. But flow is also something more. Flow is intelligence. Consider this. No central authority tells a forest what to do. There is no CEO of the Amazon rainforest. There is no president of the prairie. There is no manager directing the coral reef. And yet, forests regulate climate. Wetlands purify water. Coral reefs protect coastlines. Grasslands store carbon. How? Through flow. Through billions of small exchanges, happening continuously, automatically, elegantly. Each organism takes what it needs. Each organism gives what it can. Each organism participates in a system larger than itself. This is the quiet miracle of ecosystems, cooperation without command. In America, we often celebrate independence. We admire the self-made individual, the lone pioneer, the solitary innovator. But ecosystems teach us a different truth. Nothing survives alone. Not the oak tree, not the wolf, not the eagle, not even us. The oxygen you breathe right now was produced by organisms. The food you ate today was part of an ecosystem. The water you drank has traveled through clouds, soil, rivers, and time itself. You are not separate from ecosystems. You are an ecosystem. Your body contains more microbial cells than human cells. You are not an individual. You are a community. You are not a thing. You are a flow. This realization changes everything. Because if life depends on flow, then our responsibility is not simply to exist, but to protect the conditions that allow flow to continue. And today, across our planet, those flows are under threat. Rivers are being dammed, forests are being fragmented, oceans are being acidified, soils are being depleted, and when flow is disrupted, ecosystems begin to fail. Not immediately, not dramatically, but gradually, quietly, until one day, what was once alive becomes silent. But there is hope, because ecosystems are resilient. They have survived ice ages. They have survived asteroid impacts. They have survived mass extinctions. And they have survived because of flow. Flow allows adaptation. Flow allows recovery. Flow allows renewal. When a forest burns, nutrients flow back into the soil. When a river floods, sediments flow into the plains. When a species disappears, others adjust. Flow is the mechanism of healing. And this brings us to a profound question. What can ecosystems teach us? Not just about nature, but about ourselves. Because ecosystems are not only biological systems, they are models of wisdom. They teach us that strength is not rigidity, it is flexibility. They teach us that survival is not domination, it is participation. They teach us that resilience is not resistance, it is adaptation. The river does not resist the rock, it flows around it. And in doing so, it shapes the rock itself. Over time, the river wins, not through force, but through persistence. This is the power of flow. And tonight, I invite you to explore this power with me. We will explore how energy flows through ecosystems, how nutrients cycle through life and death, how water connects continents and clouds, how invisible networks beneath forests allow trees to communicate, how disruption affects not just nature, but humanity, and most importantly, how understanding flow can transform the way we see our world, our society, and ourselves. Because when we understand flow, we understand connection. When we understand connection, we understand responsibility. And when we understand responsibility, we discover our role, not as owners of Earth, but as participants in its living systems. The river is still flowing. The question is, will we flow with it, or will we stand in its way? The flow of energy, the invisible currency of life. Ladies and gentlemen, if flow is the language of ecosystems, then energy is their currency. Every movement, every heartbeat, every leaf, every wing in flight, every living action is powered by energy. And the greatest source of that energy, the source of nearly all life on Earth, is something so familiar that we rarely stop to think about it. The sun. Every morning, without fail, the sun rises over this nation. It shines on the skyscrapers of New York, the farmlands of Iowa, the forests of Washington, the deserts of Nevada. And with that light comes possibility. But here is what is truly astonishing. Only a tiny fraction of that sunlight, less than 1%, is captured by living organisms. And yet, that tiny fraction powers the entire biosphere. How? Through one of the most elegant processes in existence, photosynthesis. A single leaf, silent, fragile, easily overlooked, performs a miracle every day. It takes sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water and transforms them into sugar and oxygen. Light becomes life. This is the beginning of flow. Plants are not just passive organisms, they are gateways. They are bridges between the physical world of energy and the biological world of life. They capture energy and make it available to everything else. The deer that grazes in a meadow depends on the grass. The wolf that hunts the deer depends on the grass. The fungi beneath the soil depend on the grass. Even the bacteria you cannot see depend on the grass. Everything traces back to that original flow of solar energy. And here is a truth that is both humbling and profound. Every step you take is powered by sunlight that was captured by plants. The breakfast you ate this morning, the grains, the fruit, the coffee, the eggs, represent stored sunlight. Energy that traveled across space, entered a plant, moved through an ecosystem, and ultimately reached you. You are walking on sunlight. You are thinking on sunlight. You are alive because energy flowed. But energy flow is not endless. It follows rules. In ecosystems, energy moves through what scientists call trophic levels, from producers like plants to consumers like herbivores to predators and finally to decomposers. At each step, energy is used. At each step, energy is lost as heat. Only about 10% of energy moves from one level to the next. This means ecosystems depend on efficiency. They depend on balance. They depend on continuous input. If that input is disrupted, the entire system feels the consequences. Imagine removing plants from an ecosystem. Herbivores lose their food. Predators lose their prey. Decomposers lose their source of nutrients. The flow collapses. And when flow collapses, ecosystems unravel. But energy flow is not just about survival. It is about structure. Energy determines how many organisms an ecosystem can support. It determines whether a region becomes a desert or a forest. It determines whether life flourishes or fades. In the American Midwest, vast fields of corn and wheat capture enormous amounts of solar energy. These lands have become some of the most productive agricultural regions on Earth. But productivity depends on maintaining flow of nutrients, flow of water, flow of energy. When soil is depleted, productivity declines. When water disappears, crops fail. When ecosystems are simplified too much, resilience weakens. Nature thrives on complexity. Nature thrives on diversity. Nature thrives on flow. And here is something extraordinary that scientists have discovered in recent decades. Energy flow does not just connect species, it shapes behavior. Predators do not simply consume prey. Their presence changes how prey move, where they feed, and how ecosystems function. In Yellowstone National Park, when wolves were reintroduced after decades of absence, something remarkable happened. The wolves reduced the elk population, but more importantly, they changed the elk's behavior. Elk stopped grazing in vulnerable river valleys. As a result, vegetation began to recover. Aspen trees grew taller. Willow trees returned. Bird populations increased. Beavers came back. Rivers stabilized. Yes, even the rivers changed. This is the power of flow. One species restored, one flow reactivated, an entire ecosystem transformed. This phenomenon is called a trophic cascade, but beyond the scientific term lies a deeper truth. Everything is connected. When energy flows properly, ecosystems organize themselves into systems of stability, productivity, and beauty. When energy flow is disrupted, instability emerges. We see this not only in forests and rivers, but in human systems. Cities depend on energy flow. Economies depend on energy flow. Societies depend on energy flow. When energy flows reliably, societies prosper. When energy becomes unstable, societies struggle. Energy is not just a scientific concept, it is a foundation of civilization. But ecosystems teach us something that human systems often forget. Energy must flow sustainably. Nature does not hoard energy. Nature does not accumulate endlessly. Nature uses what it needs and reinvests the rest. In a forest, there is no landfill. When a tree falls, it becomes food for fungi. The fungi nourish the soil. The soil nourishes new life. Death becomes life. Endings become beginnings. Flow continues. This is not waste. This is wisdom. Nature has been refining this system for 3.8 billion years. Every ecosystem alive today is the result of continuous experimentation, adaptation, and flow across unimaginable spans of time. And yet, in just a few centuries, human activity has altered energy flows across the entire planet. We have extracted ancient sunlight stored in fossil fuels. We have released carbon that was locked away for millions of years. We have accelerated processes that once unfolded slowly. This is not a moral judgment. It is a physical reality, and physics always responds. But ecosystems are not fragile in the way we sometimes imagine. They are resilient, they are adaptive, they are dynamic. If given the opportunity, they recover. Forests regrow, wetlands restore themselves, wildlife returns, flow resumes. And this brings us to an essential realization. Our role is not to control ecosystems. Our role is to protect the conditions that allow flow. We are not separate from energy flow. We are participants in it. Every decision we make, what we consume, how we build, how we live, affects the pathways through which energy moves. This is not a burden. It is a privilege. Because to understand flow is to understand our place in the story of life. You are not just living on Earth. You are participating in a 3.8 billion year old flow of energy that began with the first spark of life. That flow has never stopped. It continues in forests, it continues in oceans, it continues in rivers, and it continues in you. The question is not whether flow exists. The question is whether we will choose to align with it. Because when we align with flow, we align with life itself. The flow of water, the planet's circulatory system. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a substance so powerful that it can carve canyons deeper than skyscrapers are tall, so patient that it can reshape continents, so gentle that it falls from the sky like a whisper. That substance is water. Water is the circulatory system of our planet. Just as blood flows through your veins, water flows through Earth's ecosystems, connecting oceans, clouds, rivers, soil, plants, animals, and you. At this very moment, water is moving through your body. It is carrying oxygen to your cells. It is regulating your temperature. It is sustaining your life. You are quite literally a vessel of flowing water. About 60% of your body is water. But here is something even more astonishing. The water inside you today may have once flowed through the Mississippi River. It may have fallen as snow in the Rocky Mountains. It may have existed inside a dinosaur. It may have traveled through clouds over the Atlantic Ocean centuries ago. Water does not recognize boundaries. It flows across time. It flows across geography. It flows across life itself. This continuous movement is called the hydrological cycle. Water evaporates from oceans, lakes, and forests. It rises invisibly into the atmosphere. It forms clouds. It travels thousands of miles. It falls as rain or snow. It enters rivers. It seeps into soil. It nourishes plants. It feeds animals. And eventually, it returns to the ocean. Again and again. Endlessly. This cycle has been operating for billions of years. It is one of the oldest flows on Earth, and every ecosystem depends on it. Where water flows reliably, life flourishes. Where water disappears, ecosystems collapse. Consider the American West. Rivers like the Colorado River have sustained cities, farms, and ecosystems for generations. These rivers have allowed deserts to bloom with agriculture. They have enabled communities to grow in places that would otherwise be inhospitable. But when water flow decreases, the consequences ripple outward. Soil dries, plants wither, wildlife migrates or dies. Communities face uncertainty. Water flow determines possibility. But water does more than sustain life. It shapes landscapes. Over millions of years, flowing water carved the Grand Canyon, one of the most breathtaking landscapes on Earth. Think about that for a moment. Not explosives, not machines, not forceful destruction, just water, flowing, patiently, persistently, day after day, year after year, millennium after millennium. This is the power of flow, not force, but consistency. Water teaches us that the greatest transformations often happen gradually, not in dramatic moments, but in continuous movement. And water connects ecosystems in ways we cannot always see. When rain falls in a forest, some of it enters streams. Those streams feed rivers. Those rivers carry nutrients downstream. Those nutrients support wetlands, fisheries, and coastal ecosystems. A single drop of rain in the mountains may eventually support life hundreds or even thousands of miles away. Everything is connected by flow. Forests, in particular, play a critical role in regulating water flow. Trees do not simply consume water, they redistribute it. Through their roots, they draw water from the soil. Through their leaves, they release water vapor into the atmosphere. This process, called transpiration, helps create clouds. In fact, forests help generate rainfall. They are not just recipients of water, they are creators of rain. The Amazon rainforest produces much of its own rainfall through this process. It functions like a giant biological pump, recycling water continuously. This means ecosystems do not just depend on flow. They help sustain flow. They are active participants in Earth's circulatory system. Wetlands provide another extraordinary example. Wetlands act like natural kidneys for the planet. They filter pollutants. They absorb excess water during floods. They release water slowly during droughts. They stabilize ecosystems. They protect communities. Yet for decades, wetlands were viewed as obstacles, places to be drained, filled, and developed. Only later did we realize what we had lost. Only later did we understand their role in sustaining flow. But here is one of the most profound truths about water. Water carries memory. Not memory in the human sense, but physical memory. Water reflects the conditions of the environments it moves through. Polluted water carries pollution forward. Clean water carries life forward. Water connects cause and effect. What happens in one place affects another. This is the nature of flow. And this truth extends beyond ecology. It extends into human responsibility. The water we protect today sustains future generations. The water we contaminate today creates future consequences. Flow connects present actions with future realities. Water also teaches us about resilience. When obstacles appear, water does not stop. It adapts. It flows around barriers. It finds new paths. It persists. And over time, even the hardest stone yields to its movement. This is not weakness. This is strength. Flexibility is strength. Adaptation is strength. Flow is strength. And yet, despite water's resilience, its flows can be disrupted. When rivers are blocked, ecosystems downstream suffer. When groundwater is depleted faster than it can replenish, landscapes change. When climate patterns shift, water availability changes. These disruptions affect not just ecosystems, but human lives. Farmers depend on rainfall. Cities depend on reservoirs. Communities depend on reliable water flow. Water is not just an environmental issue. It is a human issue. It is an economic issue. It is a national security issue. But ecosystems offer us guidance. They show us how to manage water sustainably. Forests regulate flow naturally. Wetlands buffer extremes naturally. Healthy soils retain water naturally. Nature has already designed the solutions. Our role is to learn from them, to work with flow, not against it, to protect the systems that protect us. Because ultimately, water flow is not just about ecosystems. It is about continuity. It is about ensuring that life can continue, not just today, but tomorrow and for generations to come. Every river is a story in motion. Every raindrop is part of a journey. Every ecosystem is sustained by the quiet, persistent flow of water. And just like water, life itself is not defined by stillness, but by movement. Not by resistance, but by flow. Thank you.